Hey everybody, welcome back for another Deep Dive, and today we're going to be talking about Fannie Lou Hamer,
Oh, wow.
a real powerhouse in
Yes,
the civil rights movement.
absolutely.
And for this one, we're going to be using excerpts from the documentary Fannie Lou Hamer's America.
Great film.
Yeah, and it's just her story is so incredible, and it's one of those things you just don't forget once you hear it.
Yeah, it's interesting because you hear about a lot of these kind of iconic figures from that era.
Right.
But Hamer's story really kind of hits differently.
Yeah.
I mean, she starts as a sharecropper,
Yeah.
born into a system that was basically designed to keep her down.
Right.
And she rises to challenge like the very core of American democracy.
Yeah, and just to give people a little background, I mean, imagine picking cotton when you're 6 years old,
Oh my God.
and all you get for that is some Cracker Jacks and cheese.
Wow.
That was her reality growing up on a Mississippi plantation, one of 20 children.
It's hard to even fathom.
Yeah, I mean, it just makes you really realize how different her childhood was from probably everybody listening to this, right?
Absolutely, and that upbringing steeped in poverty and racism
Yeah.
really shaped her worldview. To understand the force of her will, I think you have to grasp the context that she came from.
For sure, and I was really struck by this part in the documentary where she talks about praying as a teenager. And she basically made this vow that if she lived to adulthood, she would dedicate her life to fighting for change.
Hmm,
It's like she had this premonition that her life was going to be something bigger.
that's a great point. And she connected her personal struggles to a broader vision of justice.
Right.
Hamer saw the plight of all poor people,
Right.
regardless of race, as intertwined with her own.
Right.
And that empathy really fueled her work, not just for voting rights, but also for economic empowerment.
Right. And it wasn't just about the ballot box. Then in 1962, SNCC comes to Ruleville.
Yeah, these young activists, some of them even, like your age coming down.
I know. Crazy to Mississippi.
And that's when everything changes for her because for the first time she learns that black people have the right to vote.
Wow.
And her reaction is almost like disbelief, and it makes you think like, why was that revelation so shocking to somebody like Hamer?
Yeah.
What does that say about the society that she was living in?
It speaks volumes, right?
Yeah.
Imagine discovering a fundamental right
Right.
that you've been denied your entire life.
Right.
And I think that realization ignited a fire in Hamer, and it shows the power of education and organizing to awaken people to their own agency.
Totally. And she didn't hesitate to act, even though it meant putting herself in real danger.
Right.
She travels to a SNCC conference
Yeah.
and talks about how nervous she was to even sit next to a white person for the first time.
Wow.
I mean, talk about breaking down barriers.
And those barriers came with very real threats. She faced harassment, constant surveillance, even violence.
Yeah.
Remember the story about the shooting into the home of the family she was staying with?
I mean, that was the reality for Hamer and other activists.
Yeah.
They lived with constant fear.
It's almost unimaginable that that's what the fight for voting rights looked like in Mississippi back then.
Yeah.
And then comes the Winona arrest in 1963.
Yeah.
And this is a real turning point in her life.
This is tough to even hear about, arrested for attending a voter registration workshop,
Right.
beaten savagely in jail,
Yeah.
left with permanent injuries.
Yeah.
I mean, it wasn't just police brutality, it was meant to terrorize anyone who was thinking about even registering to vote.
Right.
Imagine the chilling effect this had on communities.
Totally. I know. It's horrifying to even think about, and yet you listen to her recount the experience,
Yeah.
the screams, the degrading language, the physical pain, and it's clear that her spirit wasn't broken.
That resilience is remarkable.
Yeah.
She could have retreated,
Of course.
understandably.
Yeah.
But instead, the experience fueled her. It became this symbol of the inhumanity that she was fighting against.
Yeah, for sure. And so this brings us to the national stage. It's 1964, and the Mississippi Freedom Democratic Party, the MFDP, emerges.
Right.
And some might argue that forming the separate party was a bold, even radical move. What was Hamer's thinking behind this?
It was a brilliant strategic move by forming a parallel party.
Right.
They were exposing the hypocrisy of a system that claimed to be democratic,
Right.
while shutting out black voices entirely.
Yeah, so they take their case to the 1964 Democratic National Convention in Atlantic City.
Right.
And then we get that iconic moment, Hamer's testimony before the Credentials Committee.
Powerful stuff.
And she says her words, "Is this America the land of the free and the home of the brave?"
Chills.
Hit the nation hard.
That question cut right to the heart of American ideals.
Yeah,
Exposing that gap between rhetoric and reality.
for sure.
Her story, her voice, that unwavering courage forced the nation to look in the mirror.
But the Democratic Party offered a compromise, 2 at-large seats, which the MFDP ultimately rejected. And some say that was a mistake. Didn't they gain some power by accepting that?
It's a valid question. But for Hamer and the MFDP, it was about principle.
Yeah.
They refused to be tokenized.
Right.
They demanded full representation, nothing less.
Yeah, and it seems like that setback didn't break Hamer. She realized that national politics was one arena, but local power mattered too. And this is where we see her make another huge decision, running for Congress in 1964.
This shows Hamer's long-term thinking, right?
Yeah.
It wasn't just about immediate wins. She believed in the power of electoral politics to create change.
Right.
Even if it meant starting at the local level.
And she ran on a freedom ballot, even though her name wasn't even on the official one.
Wow.
So what was the significance of that strategy?
It was a powerful act of defiance.
Yeah.
It showed that even if the system tried to exclude her, she wouldn't be silenced.
Right.
And the results were stunning.
Over 33,000 votes.
With all of the voter suppression tactics being used against her.
I know, it's amazing.
It demonstrates the thirst for change.
Yeah.
That existed within the Black community.
Yeah.
Hamer wasn't just a voice for them. She embodied their resilience, their desire to claim their rightful place in society.
And then in 1965, she goes to Washington to challenge the seating of the 5 Mississippi representatives.
Right.
And this results in her arrest for unlawful occupancy of a public building. Again, she's willing to put herself on the line for her beliefs.
It's fascinating how Hamer utilized every platform she gained to advocate for change.
Right.
Even facing arrest.
Yeah.
She turned it into an opportunity to expose injustice.
Right.
To force those in power to pay attention.
Right.
And she addressed Congress directly, demanding new and free elections in Mississippi.
Yeah.
This wasn't about personal ambition. It was about dismantling a system that was designed to exclude Black voices.
Yeah, and it's clear that her activism went beyond just voting rights. She seemed to understand that true freedom also meant economic empowerment.
Right.
And this leads us to the Freedom Farms Cooperative.
Exactly. Freedom Farms wasn't just charity. It was about ownership. Hamer believed that land ownership was key to Black empowerment, echoing, Reconstruction era ideas.
Right.
The cooperative, founded in the late 1960s, aimed to address poverty and hunger head-on by providing land resources and training for Black families to grow their own food and achieve self-sufficiency.
That's so interesting. It wasn't just about immediate relief, it was about long-term solutions and self-determination.
Right.
She was saying, okay, we have the right to vote, but now let's build a system where everyone can thrive.
And it all goes back to her own experiences with poverty and hunger.
Right.
She knew firsthand the devastating effects of economic inequality.
Right.
And she was determined to break that cycle for others.
So she was fighting for economic justice, for voting rights, and against racial inequality.
Yeah.
Her vision was really expansive. It makes you wonder, what else was she working towards?
That's a great question, and it's where we'll pick up next. Well, she was also a big proponent of Black power. But she didn't just see it as like political power. It was about economic power. Control over education, and ultimately the ability for Black communities to really shape their own destiny.
So kind of like the idea of self-determination that we hear a lot about today.
Exactly.
Oh.
Hamer understood that true equality requires more than just symbolic gestures.
Right.
It requires a redistribution of power, and she was adamant that progress couldn't wait.
Yeah.
She famously said, I didn't come to Washington to hear no bills being legislated that they would feed me in 1972. What in the world is going on between 1972? I'm thinking about what you're going to do for my people in December. She demanded urgency action, not just empty promises.
Yeah, she wasn't messing around, but she also understood that to achieve these goals, she needed to work across racial lines.
Yeah.
Didn't she believe in the power of multiracial coalitions?
Absolutely. Hamer recognized that the fight for freedom is a collective one.
Yeah.
She saw the potential for unity even amidst deep divisions. She even talked about the good white people in Mississippi. The ones who would eventually find the courage to speak out against racism. And I think her faith in the possibility of reconciliation feels particularly relevant.
Oh, for sure.
In today's kind of polarized climate.
Yeah, and she had such a way with words.
Oh, yeah.
Making these complex issues so relatable. Like when she said, we've been down so long, we ain't got no other way to go but up. It's so simple, but so powerful.
That's the beauty of Hamer's language. She spoke from the heart.
Yeah.
Using plain language that resonated with people from all walks of life.
Right.
She didn't need fancy rhetoric to convey the urgency of her message,
Yeah.
the depth of her conviction.
And she never let people forget the human cost of injustice,
Right.
talking about those who were killed, beaten, terrorized simply for trying to exercise their basic rights.
She kept their memory alive,
Right.
reminding everyone that the fight for freedom often demands immense sacrifice. And I think she honored those who came before her, paving the way for the advancements that we see today.
Yeah.
Their stories, their struggles are woven into her own narrative.
And she really placed a huge emphasis on education, like
Right.
understanding history, knowing your rights.
Yeah.
There's that striking quote where she said, I'd never heard until 1962 that black people could register and vote. I'd never even heard that that was in the Constitution.
Wow.
It makes you realize the power of knowledge to empower and liberate.
This underscores the importance of critical thinking.
Right.
Questioning narratives and seeking out diverse perspectives.
Yeah.
And I think Hamer's journey highlights the transformative power of education.
Yeah.
It can awaken people to their own agency.
She was also a big champion for young people.
Oh, yeah.
Believing that they held the key to a better future.
She saw their idealism and their passion for justice as having the potential to really reshape society. Her message to them was clear. Don't be afraid to challenge the status quo and demand more from those in power.
So as we're kind of delving deeper into her legacy, what stands out to you the most? Like, what's the most important takeaway for our listener?
For me, it's her unwavering faith in the power of ordinary people to create extraordinary change.
Yeah.
She was a sharecropper, a woman black, living in one of the most oppressive environments imaginable.
Right.
Yet she met those challenges with courage and conviction.
She was a force of nature.
Absolutely.
And her legacy continues to inspire activists and organizers to this day.
It does.
Her story reminds us that even in the darkest of times, hope and resilience can prevail.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And it underscores the importance of speaking truth to power, demanding accountability, and never giving up on the fight for justice.
Right.
Hamer's life is a testament to the enduring power of the human spirit to overcome adversity.
And here's where it gets really interesting. She actually talked about her struggles to sing the national anthem. And she said that for so many, the land of the free and the home of the brave actually meant the land of the tree and the home of the grave.
Wow.
And it speaks volumes about the complex relationship Black Americans have with patriotism.
It's a profound observation.
Yeah.
Hamer was deeply patriotic.
Yeah.
Yet she recognized the hypocrisy of a nation that proclaimed freedom while denying it to millions of its citizens.
Right.
And her difficulty singing the anthem reflects that tension.
Yeah.
That bittersweet awareness of America's unfulfilled promise.
Yeah, and she didn't shy away from calling out that hypocrisy.
No.
She said Mississippi's problem is America's problem. It's a powerful reminder that injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere.
It challenges us to look beyond regional divides and acknowledge the systemic nature of oppression.
Yeah.
Hamer understood that true freedom requires a collective effort.
Right.
A commitment to dismantling the structures that perpetuate inequality.
Yeah. And she used her personal experiences to highlight these issues. She talked about her daughter being hospitalized for malnutrition.
Right.
And not because they were lazy, but because they were never paid fairly for their work.
Right.
It's a stark reminder of the economic realities of racism.
It shows how interconnected these social justice issues really are.
Exactly. And she saw voting rights, economic justice, and racial equality as all intertwined.
Yeah.
She understood that true liberation requires addressing all forms of oppression. So what can our listener learn from Fannie Lou Hamer's life and legacy? How can they apply her spirit of courage and determination to the challenges that we face today?
That's a great question. I think Hamer's story offers several valuable lessons.
Yeah.
First, it teaches us the power of individual action.
Right.
She started as one person, a sharecropper with limited resources, yet she sparked a movement.
Yeah.
Her story reminds us that even small acts of courage can have a ripple effect,
Right.
inspiring others to join the fight for justice.
It's like that quote, never doubt that a small group of thoughtful, committed citizens can change the world. Indeed, it's the only thing that ever has.
Yeah.
And she embodies that sentiment perfectly.
Absolutely. And she also teaches us the importance of speaking truth to power, no matter the consequences.
Yeah.
She never backed down from confronting injustice, even when it meant facing violence and imprisonment.
Yeah.
Her unwavering commitment to truth-telling is a model for all of us.
And it's so easy to get kind of bogged down by negativity in the world and
Uh-huh.
feel overwhelmed by the scale of the problems that we face.
Sure.
But her story is a powerful reminder that change is possible.
Yeah.
That even in the darkest of times, hope can prevail.
Her spirit of optimism, her unwavering belief in the power of ordinary people to create extraordinary change.
Yeah.
It's a gift that continues to inspire us today.
Yeah, it's easy to get caught up in all the negative stuff going on, but her story really highlights that belief in the power of people to actually make a change.
Right.
She didn't just talk the talk. She walked the walk and she fought for it every single day.
That's what's so compelling about it.
Yeah.
And she never gave up.
Right.
Even when the odds were like totally stacked against her.
I know.
It's a powerful lesson for all of us.
It is.
To keep fighting for what we believe in.
Yeah.
Even when it feels impossible.
It's about persistence, and it's not just about what she achieved. It's the courage she showed.
Right.
The hope she inspired in others.
Yeah.
She showed that fighting for a better world is possible.
Huge.
Even when you're faced with these huge obstacles.
Hamer's life is a testament to that idea that persistence can move mountains.
Yeah.
She didn't accomplish everything she set out to do.
Right.
But she left an undeniable mark on history.
She did.
And she paved the way for future generations to continue that fight for justice.
So as we wrap up our deep dive into Fannie Lou Hamer's America, what's the one thing you hope our listener will take away from her story?
I think her story is a call to action for everyone listening. It's a reminder that we have a responsibility to carry on her legacy.
Right.
To fight for justice, for equality, for a world where everyone has the opportunity to thrive.
It really leaves you with a lot to think about.
Yeah.
What will we do with that responsibility? How will we honor her legacy in our own lives? How will we use our own voices and actions to create a more just and equitable world?
These are questions worth pondering.
They really are, and I encourage everyone listening to learn more about Hamer's life and work.
Me too.
Her story is a gift, a reminder that even in the darkest of times, hope and resilience can prevail. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive. We'll see you next time.